Welcome to another session in our research methods journey. This one will be on research strategy. Research strategy is placed by Saunders in the middle of his research onion. It is a very important layer because in choosing a particular research strategy, what we do is that we align and justify the alignment of the outer layers, so research philosophy and research approach, and the middle layers, so that the actual research methods we're going to use, whether they are many or one, whether they are quantitative or qualitative, and whether the collection of those methods and whether the choice of methods in terms of collection coincides with the choice of analysis. In other words, if we collect qualitative data and analyze it qualitatively, or if we collect qualitative data and analyze it quantitatively. The choice of research strategy allows us to justify the alignment between all our other choices. So it's a very, very important layer, much as it's a singular one. The options that Saunders offers for research strategies are experiment, survey, case study, action research, grounded theory, ethnography, and archival research. Now, not all of these options are applicable to research undertaken on the basis of secondary data. The ones that are applicable are the survey, case study, and archival research. So in this video, we will only be referring to these three. Let's start with a case study. A lot of our students choose to undertake a case study for their dissertations, so it is widely used, and I personally fully recommend it to you as well. What is a case study? Quite simply, it is a study of one example of a particular type. For example, Oxford University is an example of a university. Ryanair is an example of a budget airline. Richard Branson is an example of an entrepreneur. Glasgow University students, examples of students in UK higher education. And UK higher education itself is one case of higher education in general. Now, are these examples characteristic of their type? Is Oxford University characteristic of all British universities, or even of an ancient university? I think you would agree that it's not. Similarly, Ryanair is not characteristic of all budget airlines. So if you undertake research using Ryanair as a case study, your findings will not be generalizable to other airlines, not even to other budget airlines. So the issue of generalizability is a key one with case studies. Let's say you employ a case study strategy based on Dell Corporation. The findings you will get may or may not apply to companies that are similar to Dell. So best if you don't claim that those findings are applicable to other companies other than Dell. Therefore, if you are to choose a case study for your dissertation, you will work on the assumption that your findings will not be generalizable, will not be necessarily applicable to any other case, however similar the case might be to the case study studied in the research. However, the good news is, I suppose, that non-generalizable does not mean less valuable than generalizable studies. So you don't really need to worry about potentially getting a lower mark because you're doing a case study research. Case study research is very valuable in itself. I'm personally using it extensively, and I publish quite a lot from case study research. So they are valuable in themselves, and they are given the kudos they deserve by the academic community. The only thing you need to mind is aligning this type of methodology with the claims you're making about your findings, about the generalizability of your findings. So, in a nutshell, even though we may not be able to extend our findings to other cases, case study research provides a rich understanding of a real-life context. No other type of research provides such an opportunity. So it is truly important that research also relies on case studies. Otherwise, research will simply be made of patterns and laws, so offering perhaps a superficial understanding of reality rather than a deep, rich one where the exceptions to the rules are equally highlighted and given equal importance to the rules themselves. Case studies triangulate multiple sources of data. Therefore, it is common that the researcher uses a variety of methods for data collection: observation of events, collection of documents, interviews, and even questionnaires. Pretty much whatever is at hand that is part of that particular case which you wish to understand in that much detail. Now, keep in mind that if you do research using only secondary data, you will not probably be able to observe events, and you will not be able to design your own questionnaires or run your own interviews. However, you might be able to find quite a lot of interview data and questionnaire data, as well as notes on observation of events, which you might be able to use in your case study. Your attention, if this is the research strategy you wish to choose, will be focused on an individual instance, one or a few, but not a wide spectrum of such instances, with a view to gain a deep insight into those examples, into those cases. I'm using plural because sometimes you would employ multiple cases rather than just a single one. The lack of generalizability applies to either case. So whether you would employ one or a few cases, it's still unlikely that your findings are going to be applicable to other contexts. There are researchers, and notably in 2003, who argue that there's slightly more generalizability power in a multiple case study. Now, it depends somewhat on the case studies, but the rule of thumb is really that if it is a case study you choose, your findings will not be generalizable. Now, quite different from a case study is a survey. A survey is representative for a population of a particular type. Bear in mind that a survey does not mean necessarily a questionnaire. It is very easy to confuse the two because in common speech we call questionnaires surveys. However, the survey as a research strategy may well entail interviews and not necessarily questionnaires. So research employing a survey strategy can use a whole range of methods, just as many as a case study strategy can use. Having said that, questionnaires are most commonly used with a survey research strategy. The reason being that the aim with both survey as a strategy and survey as a research method is to produce generalizable, generally applicable findings, to produce patterns, laws of behavior, rather than focusing on exceptions in the way case studies would. Examples of surveys would be survey of 30 universities from the population of universities, and because we wish to generalize our findings, then we would need to apply a solid sampling technique to give us the 30 universities that are most representative of the population of UK universities. Similarly, 200 retail companies in Europe, that sample would need to be representative of retail companies in Europe. And if it is interviews that you wish to do, and you wish to, say, survey the vice chancellors of UK universities, then you would need to employ a sampling technique through which you select representative vice chancellors or vice chancellors from representative universities. Surveys are particularly popular in business research. They are perceived as authoritative because the findings are generalizable, allow the collection of quantitative data, but as I said, occasionally qualitative data can also be collected on the basis of a survey as a research strategy. Now, finally, archival research uses administrative records and documents as the principal sources of data, allows research questions to be focused on the past, either distant, historical, or recent past. So rather than having research objectives looking at, for example, the consequences of A on B expressed as a general statement, your research objective, if you are to apply archival research, might sound something like, what was the impact of A on B? What was the consequence of A on B? So your research questions would be in the past. The rationale for employing such a research strategy is to understand the past that might help us understand the future. So, for example, if we understand things that happened in, say, the industrialization, we might be able to understand similar turns in history. So, it is a valuable research strategy, however, rarely utilized outside the discipline of business history. Archival research is constrained by the nature of the records and the documents on offer. Typically, an archive will hold particular types of documents, and every archive would hold different documents. So, archival research would be constrained on the type of documents held in a particular archive, and quite often, people doing this type of research will have to travel at some length to collect a significant number of documents, perhaps referring to a significant number of cases, to enhance their understanding of the past on which they wish to focus. So a research strategy that is possible, and in fact it is constrained to secondary data. However, very few of our students choose this option. It isn't particularly representative of business research, but it is representative of business history, if this is something you would consider for your research.